everybody should speak English, and please don't arrest me, British police, because it's not me saying that. It's actually the Prime Minister of Great Britain is saying it now. This is all part of his speech from was it yesterday or the day before, where he basically made a lurch to the far right promptly after Reform started to...
That's the thing, if he does it, it's not far right. That's
Oh, yes, no.
Far right. If he does it, it's perfectly centrist and normal and real.
Oh, when he moves the centre with him.
Yes, he's now the JFK
Yes.
of the left.
Yes, which
you were saying
hang
exactly...
on, steady on. I mean, some of that's a little bit of a libelous comparison. We're not allowed to say that in public, that kind of stuff. Not quite yet. We're not quite ready for that.
But that's exactly what JFK was saying, that people should be coming over to America speaking English, complying themselves with the country, being behind the Constitution at that particular time. There's a lot of things that were said about that, right going up to Clinton. It was very similar in terms of what now would be regarded as far right.
Oh, right. Well,
it's only far right if it's not useful for them at that particular time. Far right, I'm surprised they still keep using it and they haven't come up with a synonym. It's obviously a smear. We're tired of the smear. It's far right if it's not useful for him. It wasn't useful for him 10 years ago. It's useful for him now to say immigration's gone too far because people have had enough. It really is getting too tense. So suddenly it will stop being far right. As long as those in power and those that can be trusted advocate it rather than housewives or whatever who are angry and are on Twitter.
Yes, I mean, you've both seen it the way that I think that I saw it. That could also be perceived as a coded assault on Angela Rayner, possibly. No,
I always find it really weird that I was actually about a mile away when I grew up from Angela Rayner. She was on the Stockport Girl on the council estate. That actually, to be fair, it was pretty rough where she is. And
did she have a bit of a reputation back in the day?
Did it spread to where you are?
Well, I was down in Burnage, and then moved into an area called Fog Lane. On the other side of it was literally, I was 7 when she was born. Is just gone. Recently criticised in Any Questions.
I don't know.
Lucy
Powell. So you had Lucy Powell, myself in the middle, and then Angela Rayner within all the kind of...
She sounds much more middle class, though, Lucy Powell.
Lucy Powell goes to say she was born in Moss Side. There was no hospital in Moss Side. Lucy, you couldn't have been born there. If you were born at all, it was in Withington Hospital.
I could imagine her delaying pregnancy to 18, even 19.
And so her mum was the headmistress of the local comprehensive school. Her dad was working in trade unions. 2 of her aunts were also headmistresses of school, and she lived in the nice middle-class area on the side of Fog Lane that we looked past the houses and dream.
So basically she's a genetic head girl.
Yes.
A genetic Karen.
Yes, that's right.
Right. Okay, so this is interesting because, this is only... Did you remember this incident?
Yes.
Samson, why don't you play this with the sound off? But this was basically the video that emerged, can't be more than about a month ago. At this point, where this guy is basically getting arrested because he asked somebody to speak English. We said that this guy wasn't speaking English or something like that. And, back in the days of a month ago, suggesting that people should speak English was considered an arrestable offence.
It's a difficult thing, a difficult position these people are put in because, and apologies to any police officers out there, I'm aware that some police officers are highly intelligent and they become detectives and they solve major crimes and that's great. Yes. But the average IQ of a police officer, the average, is 100. And 100 IQ, that's...
Is that high?
Yes, it is. Perhaps it's lower now, but it was about 100. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of Gareth Keenan from The Office level. That's the kind of people that would say things like, if you talk about physiognomy, they'll say, oh, well, you're not so good looking yourself, so how can you talk about that? Which is the obvious fallacious argument, appeal ad hominem or whatever. This is not intelligent people. And they're being asked to negotiate the nuance of what is a highly subjective and elastic...
Oh, and the whole point with woke rules is that they change all the time, because the whole thing is we're going to change the rules arbitrarily and frequently, and it's a signalling mechanism for high-status people to show that they can keep up with whatever the latest twist and turns of this nuance is. But then it filters down to police officers who, bless them, are doing their best, and they've got to interpret this. So I get.
It's basically, if you don't this was it? What was the name called? It's called rank concession syndrome, and it's this idea that if you're not if you're not part of something, let's say status, then you will imitate it, but you will imitate it wrong. Right. And so you will imitate it in an ostentatious, over-the-top way. I forget the sociologist's name. It was some 1950 paper that looks at this. And so obviously, if the Act of Parliament defines what is offensive and wrong in a certain way, if you don't quite understand it, because you're imitating a higher class that you're not and trying to seem as good as them, you will go over the top because you don't understand the nuances.
Well, actually, I quite enjoy that particular analysis, because I've often said that when you get to chief constables and those who want to run the police in their particular areas, they're actually sitting there delighted with their wives, perfectly happy that now they can stand in mayoral events or they're at the VE day at the front, because it's a social status that they've managed to reach. And so there's a level of snobbery, one of those old classic things that come into Britain from Alfred's day and before, is that's one of the key elements of being, look, I could never have got there on my own. The way that I've done it is by brown-nosing and accepting what my political masters tell me to do. And if I want someone not to be able to arrest them for saying they're not speaking English is an arrestable offence because it's offensive, I'm doing so because at least next week I'll stand in front of VE Day and my wife is happy and I can feel as though I'm one of the elite.
I can feel, and there's probably an inherent insecurity to these people as well, because these people haven't got degrees or whatever. If they have, they've probably been to bad universities. So there's an inherent insecurity about them, and they would have to overcompensate by flexing power and by stretching the boundaries of what is illegal.
And that's where it becomes really deeply offensive to ordinary police officers who, you rightly say, they get into the job. Many of them, those that I've met when I was a junior barrister doing prosecution cases, is they generally want to help people who have been who had to face serious crimes, but they're often caught between this trap of their bosses who have a different agenda altogether. I know plenty of police officers who didn't want to go out and fight against their local individuals in the miners' strikes, for example. So eventually they won over, and that's a classic case where they said, okay, Yorkshire policemen, we know you're in the communities, you're friends with these people, you grew up with them, so what we'll do is bring a whole load of Londoners in from the Met, and they can have a good fight and knock them out and put them in hospital, and then you won't be blamed. But at the end of the day, people did blame them because they were part of the institution who was doing as they were told.
There was something to be said, as I understand it. When the police force first began, there was a degree to which people that became detectives and so on were relatively educated.
Yes.
And then it was, this is 1850s or 60s, and it was felt that, no, they need to be part of the community from which they come.
Yes.
So they, it gives them a degree of respect or so forth among the community. And so they're kind of preempting crime via just being there, and B, simply because they can think how they think. They've grown up with these kinds of people. So there is some benefit to that sort of street smarts, that kind of intelligence, if you want. Absolutely. But unfortunately, it's a problem when it's people who get into positions of and have to interpret really vague and bad laws. That's
well, yes, and a ruling sentiment. And returning to the Keir Starmer's point about how we're all supposed to be hearing English now. I mean, we're going to also have to explain why half the signs on the tube station are now in foreign languages.
Yes, I was there the other day. I was there the other day, and
I thought this was a joke actually when I first time.
Have you not seen this? Have you not seen this? No.
I thought it wasn't realistic. Because why this language and not any other?
Because everybody there is Bengali, so pretty much without exception. To the extent that if you want to go there, you probably should learn a little bit of Bengali, because otherwise you won't be able to make yourself understood with a lot of the market traders that are opposite that station, that are in front of you.
If you're going to a foreign area, I suppose it's incumbent upon you to learn the language.
Well, that's a good point that Keir Starmer has made.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, except it used to be the other way around. Interesting point. My button's working. No, my buttons aren't working yet. Here we go. So this is Somalian proficiency. The key takeaway being, and I've got the comparison to the Dutch people here, but if you're a Dutch person who has never visited an English-speaking country, you are more likely to speak English than a Somalian person living in the UK.
Yeah.
Yes,
that is true. I mean, I assume this is Somalia rather than Somaliland. In Somaliland, which was British ruled.
Yes.
Then the standard of English is a lot better. Somalia was Italian ruled, and of course you still get elderly people in Somalia that can speak Italian.
Oh, right.
But
that I didn't know.
With the education system having Subak Wanaksan to any of our Somali viewers.
Yeah, very good. This Keir Starmer's effort to try and get people to speak English. There was some pushback from the Welsh and the Scots saying,
and the Scousers.
Well, did the Scouts have their own language? I don't know.
So I'm Mancunian, so there was always this battle between Liverpudlians and ourselves. I'll probably get killed for all our Scouser friends out there, but you know where I'm coming from on this.
Right, I thought it was just dialect rather
it is.
Rather than
we're not sure they speak.
Yeah, I checked the numbers on the Scots, and apparently 1.3% of Scotland's population can speak Gaelic. Which isn't that much.
Gaelic. No, it's not very much. No, apparently there's more Gaelic speakers in Nova Scotia than there are in Scotland, and it's been maintained in Nova Scotian communities.
Okay.
But then of course there's Scots and there's Doric. And some people would suggest that those are separate languages, to the extent that I was once in a pub in Aberdeen and this girl comes up to me and just says some gibberish, and I went, "What?" And then says it again in English, and she was speaking in Doric. So it's different, which is the Aberdeen version of Scots. So it was different enough that I couldn't understand it at all. So it could be argued that of course, Scotland doesn't have any immigrants hardly at all, so that's why it's able to virtue signal about the
yes, but it's a bit cold. They don't want to go there.
Of immigrate. Well, to be fair, they come to Finland, which is even colder, because it has a good welfare system. But you could argue that they should be learning Scots, or if they go to Wales, they should be learning.
Well, Welsh are doing a bit better. Apparently, 17% of the Welsh population can speak Welsh, which seems astonishingly high to me.
Well, 70%
you'd be fair. I lived in Colwyn Bay and Llandudno, and they spoke Welsh pretty clearly up there in between the north and the Gogs. There's the Goglites.
Right.
I went to Aberystwyth University, and I spent my first year in Pantycelyn, which was they regarded that as their Oxford College, where everybody spoke Welsh. Every evening they'd have their dinners with Welsh speakers coming up, on the way that it was introduced as a formal college for them. Unfortunately, being somebody who couldn't speak Welsh at all when I got there, tried to learn it and realised that once you got 7 words for that was too much for me, particularly as a Mancunian. And so huge number of words in there, and all I remembered learning was dim ysmwgu, dim parcio, and dim mancio, which was no smoking, no parking, and a dim manc.
Oh, okay. That's what was given to you, basically, was it?
Yes, that's right.
So is dim manc stupid Mancunian person?
Yeah, that was me, stupid Mancunian, because I couldn't speak Welsh at the time of my year there.
Right.
So that was it.
Yeah, well, it remains to be seen if the Welsh and Scottish governments are going to impose similar edicts upon their immigrants. But I don't know on that.
Oh, I doubt that.
Yes.
When you see the councils up in the north of Wales, they were not doing that then.
Yes, apparently the UK government is at the moment spending $200 million a year of taxpayers' money on providing free translation service.
This I don't understand. So my wife was raised in Australia, in the Finnish community there, and a lot of these Finns would in the 80s and a lot of the 70s. A lot of these Finns would find jobs for themselves. And my wife's uncle by marriage, he lived there from 1967 or something to his death, if not quite recently, and he never learned English because he was always with other Finns and so on. Now, when he needed to go to the doctor, of course the doctor didn't speak Finnish, so what all that happened, they didn't provide translators. His wife went with him, and his wife could speak English, and his wife acted as the interpreter. Now, that slows things down a little bit, perhaps, but it doesn't. You don't have to spend that.
Well, I think slowing down is the point. So, for example, when I speak of police officers, I got a mate of mine who's a police officer, and he was telling me that there is an interesting combo in his area. Basically, there's a deaf Iranian burglar who gets caught every now and again, and there's also basically
I hear the police coming.
Yeah, and there's also one guy in Hampshire who can provide signing in Farsi, and so. Basically, this second guy's services are in demand because the other guy isn't particularly proficient at not getting caught. So every so often they have to bring him in, and then they have to go and basically.
So are they in cahoots and they split the difference on the pay?
Well, I've always wondered if they're brothers or something, but no. Apparently they're quite separate or something. Yeah. But they have to provide a
friend. If you can get caught this week, okay, because I need a little extra on my mortgage.
But he could just pretend to be deaf, and frankly, if someone was in speaking Farsi sign language, we're not to know. So it could be like that South African that was doing sign language at Nelson Mandela's funeral. Just It could be anything.
Yeah.
So that could just be that sounds dodgy to me. That sounds.
I suspect that especially amongst the criminals, a lot of them they actually do speak English, but they know it slows down the process if you say, okay, well, I've got to wait for the one Farsi sign translator who's currently on holiday for 2 weeks.
Can't wait for that podcast.
I mean, the useful thing.
Can't wait for that podcast.
I don't know about the useful thing. Of course, is if you speak. I think it was what was that guy called with the limp that used to do tourism programs in the 80s and 70s that would walk along with the limp. That guy, what was his name? Famously, when Michael Palin set up his round the world in 80 days, he got advice from him. What was his name? But anyway, he said to Palin says to him, well, should I learn the foreign language? And he said, no, you'll just put you in a position of weakness straight away. Always speak English. That's your native language. It puts you in a position of power straight away.
Well, the way I do my holidays is I not ones with a wife, but when I go alone, is I never fly out of the same airport that I flew into. So I'll go into I don't know northern Vietnam, and I'll have a flight coming out of southern Vietnam, and then my holiday is basically travelling between the two. And I often end up in completely remote areas where there's very few people around or anything like that, and I've never actually had a problem speaking English. I mean, once or twice I've had to sort of point at things or something, or break out Google Translate. But you could be in the middle of nowhere these days, and everyone speaks English.
Where are the comments? Can I see the comments?
Oh,
because then someone might know the name of that limping TV presenter that I can't remember the name of in the chat.
Okay.
Well, they may come through on this.
Yes. If anyone on Rumble can send a super chat as to who a limping guy in the 70s was.
Yeah. Limping tourism presenter.
Yes,
famous.
Or failing that, when we get to the website comments at the end, I'm sure somebody will.
Oh, wait till the end. Oh, okay.
Failing that, we can always Google it in a Slack moment. But I ought to round this off.
Yeah.
I mean, the key issue really is not so much about the fact that people come here and don't speak English, because as far as I'm concerned, let's say you're an Indian centre-millionaire and you want to come here and spend your time in Bond Street clearing the place out. Speak whatever language you like. I mean, the core issue is that people are coming here, going straight on benefits, and not even having the courtesy.
Alan Wicker.
Oh,
okay. I didn't know Wicker had a limp. Okay.
Oh, well, there we go. We've got that sorted. Yeah, no, the key issue is that people are basically coming over on welfare and are not even bothering to learn the language. And
this is interesting in terms of that, because it doesn't marry up with the asylum applications, which is fine, because we've had basically 1.2 million asylum applications, the Centre for Migration, which is similar name to these. Some people start confusing us, even though I've been around a lot longer. Is that the top ones are Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and then Eritrea, and then we actually then got India and China. But here we've got the Congo coming in at benefit claims, and also Algeria, which isn't, and Morocco, which are not really even in the top 15.
I want to go to a Somali restaurant.
Oh, we've actually got one in Swindon.
Have you?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Well, it could be Ethiopian. Is there much difference?
I don't know. No, it has to be Somali.
Oh, okay.
Because and the problem is that there's none of them in central London. And two meetings with people running, I've said, let's go to a Somali restaurant. But we're in central London. By the time we finish the interview or having a laugh, then we're too knackered to go out to Putney or something to get to a Somali restaurant. So it's very elusive, and I've never.
Why are you so keen to attend a Somali?
It's just so strange that most ethnic groups seem to come to foreign countries and set up things. So in Finland, where I live, there's lots of Iraqi shops that bring in meat from Bosnia or something. It's frozen and it's much cheaper than getting it.
Well, that's the argument as to why we need them, isn't it?
There's even a Sudanese shop in Oulu, but the Somalis, for some reason, don't seem to set anything up.
Well, the entire left-wing argument is, yes, they're coming here, yes, they're committing crime and terrorism, yes, they're going on welfare, but they bring yummy food with them, therefore it's okay.
There's no yummy food. To be fair, I've had Nigerian food. Nigerian food is basically normal food with lots of pepper on it. It's not yummy. Right. So that's out.
I'm always reminded of that scene from When Harry Met Sally, where he takes her to an Ethiopian restaurant and he goes, I really didn't think they'd have anything to eat in the Ethiopian restaurant.
That's very good. That's very good. That's like a joke from the 1980s.
It is a 1980s joke.
It is.
Obviously, we'll get cancelled and burnt alive as we leave the studio.
I've got another joke like that about Ethiopians, I could tell, but it's not.
For any Zoomers listening, when we were young lads, all we ever heard about was Ethiopian famine.
Yes, that's right.
It turns out they didn't have a shortage of food. They were just in a civil war with their neighbours, or civil war against their neighbours, and they were basically selling their grain to the Russians in order to buy weapons.
Yes,
and that's why they invented Red Nose Day.
Yes, the Lenny Henry thing. And
that's the thing. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know if the Zoomers know what Red Nose Day is. Mario Perkins here is asking, does the same go for British expats living in Spain? I would imagine. Well, first of all, that's up to the Spanish.
And if so, yes.
The Perussuomalaiset, True Finns, which is the second biggest party in the Finnish coalition, Finnish governing coalition, said there should be on the spot basic Finnish tests for foreigners. Which my attitude is, bring it on. I would pass that on-the-spot test, mainly because I had to take my daughter to the park every day when she was a baby. Yes. No one at the park spoke any English, and so I had to learn Finnish. That's what forced me to learn Finnish after a couple of years in the country. But you do get a lot of people in the country. I know people that have been in the country. In fact, even when I was coming to the UK, the woman at Border Control said to me, "Oh, you live in you live in Finland?" I said, "Yeah." And then she asked supposed to speak in Finnish, and she was surprised that I could speak any Finnish at all. You do get a lot of European expats that come to these countries working for Nokia or working for universities, and they just don't bother learning at all.
I don't know.
And I think the Brits, if they're out there in Spain, many of them know a few words of Spanish.
You'd have to. Their English is not good in Spain.
No, they're not. That's my point. I think
yes, but I mean, again, it's different. They're not arriving and going on welfare. I mean, they're basically arriving with their pensions and they're spending money in the local area.
If you get a job at a university in Norway as a foreigner, you're given 2 years to learn Norwegian. I think it's 2 years to a reasonable degree. Right. And they will test you on that. And if you don't manage to learn enough Norwegian, they will just fire you.
Okay. I had a Norwegian employee.
That's quite important, actually. That's a really useful way of doing it. Because when I lived in Portugal, in north of Portugal for a year, and actually I was teaching English as a foreign language, and they said don't learn Portuguese in order to teach English as a foreign language, because it's better for the students to know that you're English. But at the same time, in that area, which is small villages, not many of them actually spoke English, so I had to learn Portuguese. So I do remember having a brilliant conversation about football. Yeah. You know, as Benfica, Sporting Lisbon had come up to Porto, and there was a mass fight going on. The taxi driver dragged me into the car to save me from being attacked by Sporting Lisbon and took me to a coffee shop.
Oh, that was nice.
Friend of mine, a Scottish friend of mine, who speaks Finnish, and he has a friend who's Italian, and he speaks Finnish but not English. And we once met up a few years ago, the three of us, and we just sat there speaking in cod Finnish, and it was perfectly fine.
Where I will end on this is you've got to remember the fingers of the Dark Lord in the background. A part of this drive of this swing to the hard right that Starmer has taken is going to be used to push out digital IDs. And the way in that they're going for is, okay, we're going to roll it out for overseas citizens. We're going to start there. We make it a thing there. We prove it there. And then after it's been there for a few years, we find another category of people to roll it out to. I don't know, students or something. And then they roll it out to somebody else. And then eventually it will just be everybody.
Yeah. I mean, and this is a disgrace. I mean, I do fear this. Along with the digital currencies, which we're currently examining. The Bank of England are working with various banks to control how we're spending our money. They're already managing to destroy the freedom of cash, which gives us an ability to be able to spend as we wish by making sure that many places in Winchester, as you know, it's very difficult to actually go and spend cash anywhere in Winchester. Most of the pubs now won't even allow you to buy a drink.
In Winchester?
In Winchester, yes.
Are you telling me that the Black Boy in Winchester is cards only?
Yeah, that still exists. But
yeah, I know, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great place, but I've not been there for a while to know, but I know most of the central ones now, and the coffee shops too, apart from the chains, they do, but a lot of them now turn to cards.
Yes. So, anyway, so that's a key point. Speak English.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.